I was changing my motorcycle oil, so I thought I'd record a video to show people how to do it at home. Here's my Street Triple R ABS 2014. Here's some of the tools I used. A number of ratchets and sockets and a cover to cover my front tyre to make sure I don't get any oil on it. Some mats on the floor. A breaker bar as well. So that's the oil. I bought some oil, don't forget to get that. And an oil filter, which I'll need. So I got a genuine Triumph one, they're only about £10. So here's my Street Triple. The first thing I've got to do is get a ratchet, get a tub to store my screws in, and take that belly pan off because that's in the way. So I've got the right socket to put on there. I'm removing the belly pan by actually using a ratchet, and I've got to undo these 4 nuts, so they come off fairly easily. The ratchet is a tool that makes it really easy to do, so if you haven't got one, grab one, it's always handy, and keep your nuts in a box so you don't lose them. Then on this bike, go round to the other side and find your sump plug. So it's usually at the bottom of the bike, it looks like a bolt head, and there's the oil filter. So we're going to change both of those. We've got to change the oil and the oil filter. So I'm going to run the bike for a bit to warm up the oil to make it easier to come out the engine. You should always do that. I'm going to run it for a few minutes. So as you can see, it's a bit hard to do while holding the camera. So start the bike, let it warm up. I've chopped the video so it's a bit quicker, so we don't have to wait for that. And once it's nice and warm, it should run out a treat. So the next thing to do is make sure you've got a bowl underneath your bike. So pop the bowl under the bike, put some plastic gloves on if you've got them, so when the oil comes out you can catch it. So there's the sump plug. We've got to crack that open or undo it. Now this is 13mm socket, and I've got a socket on there which is an impact socket which will not damage the head of the nut if it's a bit tight. They're usually black, so I've got that on the end of my bar, and as you can see I use the bar to give me some leverage just to crack it open, and then just want to unscrew that. So I do it a couple of times. That should be nice and loose now. Now by hand I just carefully do it. Remember the oil's a little bit hot, and also the pan or the bowl needs to be further forward than you think because the oil comes out quite quickly initially. As you can see, I've got a cover, nice stripy cover covering that tyre as well, so not getting any oil on it. It's about to come out. You'll see it start leaking. As you can see, look, it comes out quite quickly because it's nice and warm. And then I'm sitting here a minute thinking, well, where am I going to put this nut and washer? There's a washer on the back of the nut you need to make sure you maintain or replace when you take out the sump plug. So I'm wondering where I'm going to put that. And I'm carefully moving it over there. So the oil will run out and run out and run out. There's about 3 litres of oil in the 2004 Street Triple R ABS. So I left it for about half an hour just to carry on running. And also to help it all come out, there's a few things you can do. So I'll just push that backwards as now it's a bit slower and not so fast. Go around the other side of the bike. Let's remove the oil filler cap. So there's the one on here to let it flow out a bit better. Could have done this at the beginning, of course. So pop that out. Keep that somewhere safe. Pop it on this box. And as you can see, the oil's still coming out. So just let it run until it starts dripping dry. And then the next job is to remove that oil filter. Now they should be hand tight, but sometimes it'll be a bit difficult. So I've got this tool from Amtech that you just put on the end of a ratchet, and that helps you just untwist that a little bit. I've done it so many times, it makes it nice and easy. Untwist the oil filter, remember it's got to start coming out. So I let it run out a bit first, until there's not a really heavy flow, because I don't want to get oil everywhere. I've got a tray there to pop the old oil filter in once I've taken it out. I'm going to keep unscrewing that, and then suddenly that will come off and there'll be probably a little bit more oil. There you go. Shake that out in there. and then I'll put it in a tray so I don't get oil everywhere. So once this stopped dripping, that's all the oil out. Here's the sump plug, and it's a bit dirty, so I'm giving it a good clean. And also the washer, I've got to reuse the washer this time. It didn't look that bad, but just make sure it's nice and clean. Pop it on there, and then once you're happy it's clean enough, I'll pop that back in the hole and screw it up hand tight to start with. So I'm just, there's a nice picture of my head so you can see I've got it in there. I screwed it in hand tight, then I've got to tighten it up a little with a ratchet and an impact with the same impact socket on. So you don't want to over tighten these things. And then I've got this torque wrench. You may not have one, but if you've got a torque wrench on this particular bike, I've set it to 25 Newton meters. And that's just to check you haven't over tightened it or you've tightened it enough. And I just push it until it clicks. Click, right, that's done. Next, oil filter. Rub some fresh oil around the rubber gasket there so it just seals nicely. As you can see, it's a Triumph oil filter. You'll need to look this up in the book. Make sure you get the right filter for your bike. And then I've done it up hand tight, but it didn't feel that tight because they're a bit slippery, so I've used the same M-Tech tool but the other way around just to tighten that up to the right Newton meters, which was 10. Now, that's all the oil out, that's the oil filter replaced, the sump plug in, let's get the belly pan back on. So the trick with this is to line it up and then just put the 4 bolts in first but not tighten them, and then just wiggle it and tighten them up gently, because if you over tighten these you can crack the belly pan. I've seen that done a few times. So I put them in loosely, get the other 2 in so it's aligned nicely. Like most things on bikes, you line them up and then you slowly tighten them up. And there you go, that's the belly pan with them hand tight screwed in the right position. And then I just tighten them with a ratchet, but only, as you can see where I'm holding the ratchet, only at that end so I don't over tighten it. So it's only hand tight really. There you go, that's all you need to do. Now if you get the manual out and look up your bike, I've got oil filter change there, so it needs 3.2 litres. So because I want to make sure I get the right amount in here, I pour the oil into a measuring jug, a litre at a time. So I'll fill it up 3 times and the last one will be 1.2 litres. And we know the bike's completely empty of oil and I've got a nice funnel to use. So I'll hold the funnel up near the filler, make sure that your dipstick's in, and then just slowly pour it in. Don't rush this, you don't want to get oil all over your bike. And as you can see, that oil is a very different colour to that black stuff that came out. That black dirty oil, which was only a year ago I changed it. And I haven't spilt the drop yet, so that's good going. We need to do now, get your oil filler cap and whack that in. Don't cross thread that, that's easy done. I've done it myself before, put it on and then had to go and buy a new one. So just take your time putting that on. Should be hand tight. And that's the oil filled up. Great, give it a wipe round. Now what you need to do is run the engine for at least 30 seconds. But don't rev it, just let it run because you need to get that oil all around that engine. And then once it's warm enough, then you need to check the oil level, make sure it is actually showing on the dipstick. So that's what I'm doing here, now running the bike. We'll check, leave it for 30 seconds, then we'll check. Let's see what the dipstick says. So the dipstick on here is down below, and you haven't obviously got a window to look at the oil, so you have to use the dipstick. And it's got 3 lines on it and some hatched areas, and as you can see at the bottom there was no oil. So either we need to top up the oil or we haven't run the bike for long enough. Now I think we need to top up the oil, but I'm screwing it all the way back in. So take it out, wipe it, screw all the way back in. And here we go, look, you can see the oil's just shown at the bottom. We want it between the middle two bars. So the first bar is the minimum, the next bar is the maximum, and anything above there is probably too full. So I screwed that back in. I'm going to add a little bit more oil. So even though I put 3.2 litres in as per the manual, I need to give it a little bit more. Now it's probably because I let it stand for half an hour or so to completely empty. So the manual says it may take 3.4 litres if it's a completely dry engine. So I'll give it a bit of a top up. I'll just give it enough to fill the top of that funnel, which isn't much, but you don't want, as I say, you don't want to overfill it. So fill it to the top, let it go through, run it again. It may be a bit of a faff to run it again and then check it, but that's the best way to do it, I find. You may have to do it a couple of times. I think on this time round I've been super cautious. I did it twice before I got it right. And also I'm being a bit careful because I've got it on the paddock stand and the bike's tilted forward slightly. So I don't want, as I say, don't want to overfill it. Screw that back in. So don't just dip the dipstick in, screw it in and then unscrew it. In the meantime, in between here, I've run the bike and warmed it up. I just shortened the video for you. And as you can see by this one, I couldn't quite see where the oil was, so I'm putting it in again and screwing it in and then taking it out again just to check. And as you can see, there's oil between the two bars, so that's good enough for me. And then I'll run the bike, go for a ride, and then check it in a week or so. Make sure there's no leaks or anything like that under the bike.